Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today, and welcome to September. Hope you enjoyed Labor Day weekend, but it is crunch time. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, we have a few different meters that we're going to fire up. Usually, it's just the drop-o-meter, which we will get to. We also have the interest-o-meter for players that got called up or recalled this weekend due to the September roster expansion. So we saw lots of either young, interesting players or prospects get called back up. So we will find out exactly how interesting they are. We'll do some waiver wire moves. We have players who remained hot over the long weekend and much more, but there is a lot to discuss. So let's jump in. Get out of here! Come on! All right, Scott, you're up. Player of the weekend.
I'm going to go with Jordan Walker, who really only gets this designation from me for one day this weekend, Sunday, when he had 5 hits, including a home run. But perhaps the more significant development for Jordan Walker is that he started every game this weekend, and he started Monday, and it looks like he's just going to be a starter for the Cardinals now. When he made his grand return to the majors in mid-August, John Mozeliak, the Cardinals president of baseball operations, ended up sending him down only a week later, and he said he thinks Jordan Walker needs to play every day, and that's why he's going back to the minors. Well, what we didn't know at that time was that the Cardinals were then going to work on freeing up a spot for him to play every day, and ultimately did so by designating Tommy Pham for assignment. So now Jordan Walker's back up. He looks like an everyday player. He obviously has failed us in the past in fantasy, and maybe he will again, but he is only 22 years old still, believe it or not. And while his overall numbers of AAA are nothing to write home about, his final 26 games there, Jordan Walker hit 344. Final 26 games, he hit 344 with 5 home runs, and did so by making some changes to his setup at the plate, and you can see them if you watch Jordan Walker now. He stands a little more open. He looks a little more tense, not quite so relaxed up there, and really the changes were designed on having his hands move faster. And like, the guy produces huge exit velocity. So I think there's still a lot of upside here for Jordan Walker. He showed it with that 5-hit performance Sunday. I'm not saying you need to pick him up everywhere, but 5 outfielder leagues probably need to pick him up. And maybe this will finally be the time for the 22-year-old.
Yeah, Jordan Walker, 33% rostered. As you mentioned, going to play every day for the Cardinals from here on out. And he started every game already this weekend. I think the names that we've talked a lot about recently, Scott, the Pete Crow Armstrongs, the Lawrence Butlers, the Dylan Cruz, those are all ahead of Jordan Walker, right?
Yeah, I would say so, and especially Lawrence Butler, who could have been the player of the weekend himself, just kept it going.
Yeah, we'll talk about him a little bit later on. Jordan Walker, 34% rostered, so again, could be out there in some of those 5 outfielder leagues. He was the first name on the interest-o-meter for later on. All these names that got called up this weekend, Scott, I would assume he's pretty high on that, right? 1 to 10. We're going to have to calibrate it, but I would say he's probably the most interesting one that got recalled, right?
Yeah, and so I don't think I could go a 10 or a 9, because that suggests to me you're pretty much picking him up everywhere, and I said you shouldn't do that with Jordan Walker. So he'll probably come in as about 7, I would say, and he might be the highest rated, but that's what the interest meter looks like right now.
And last point on Jordan Walker, I know obviously it's been a tough season for him, and there was still a good amount of hype on him coming into the season. He's still only 22 years old. And I know some people might get frustrated when we bring up age, but as we've said for years now, progress is not linear, right? And no prospect is the same. No young player is the same. So just because, the Jackson Churios, have this breakout first season, it doesn't happen that way for every player. And I will point out, Jordan Walker last year as a 21-year-old still had a pretty successful season. A 276 batting average, 16 homers, 7 steals, and a 787 OPS. So, I mean, if he can produce anything like those numbers, like paced over the final month of the season, then he will be a pretty useful player. So,
you know who pointed out he was 22 years old?
Who's that?
This guy.
I'm full of Scott White.
I had to point it out because I'm always getting blamed for it, but you were just reinforcing it, just reinforcing the point. That's good.
That's exactly what I was doing, Scott. Let's go over to my player of the weekend, Willy Adames, who someone tweeted into us over the weekend, and they said, man, if Willy Adames is not the breadstick, what does this man have to do? And you know what? I think he's deserving because he had himself a pretty massive weekend. He homered in 5 straight games, including his 29th home run on Monday, Labor Day, his 29th birthday. How about that? 29 on 29. And he also has 13 3-run homers this season. Obviously added another one here on Monday, which ties Ken Griffey Jr. for the most in a season since 1961. I guess that's probably when they started, I don't know, like, is that the expansion era or when they started tracking some kind of stat? But yeah, since 1961, basically, that ties the record. 13 3-run homers for Willy Adames this season. It's been a huge season for him in a contract year, batting .255, the 29 homers, 4th most among shortstops this season, 99 RBI, 1st among shortstops. Also added in 83 runs scored, 15 steals, and 812 OPS. And the season isn't done yet. We still have a little bit less than a month left here, but breakout season here for Willy Adames. Scott, anything you'd like to add? A huge weekend for him and a huge season.
No, not really. I mean, I don't know that there's much analysis to deliver here on Willy Adames, who's obviously a must-start shortstop, and that's been evident for a few months now. I don't know that. I guess looking forward to next year, I don't know that I'm going to rank him as if he's going to repeat what looks to be a career season. Because I don't see a lot of changes in the underlying data. He'll be top 12 shortstop, of course. But I don't know that he's, I might expect a little step backward for Willy Adames next year.
Entering Monday, just wanted to point this out. He was 16th overall in Roto. That's according to the Razzball Player Rater, and the 5th best shortstop in head-to-head points leagues this season. So, again, just reinforcing a lot of what we've already said in the analysis here. But yeah, he has really, him and Churio have just like carried the Brewers this year since Christian Yelich, has gone down. They needed someone to step up, and obviously both of those guys have done exactly that. Before we hit our first break, just a heads up that we are not going anywhere in September. We will remain live 5 nights per week on YouTube. Obviously, audio podcasts will be in your feed 5 mornings per week as well. So all that same fun stuff. We're here to help you close out the fantasy season and look forward. I understand fantasy football is starting up, but obviously I would recommend to stick with us and so we get some thoughts for next year and close out the season strong. And I know I shouldn't do this, Scott. I really shouldn't. But of course, that means I'm going to do it anyway. Somebody keeps leaving us a 2-star rating on Apple Podcasts because I say the term double dong here on the podcast. Now, I think it's hilarious. But I feel like maybe if we provide a bit of a history lesson here, an FBT history lesson, it will calm this person's concerns because they are very worried about the term double dong. I think it's
what
really
could they
fun.
possibly be worried about?
I don't know. Okay. Where does it come from? What is the origin of double dong here on FBT?
Heath Cummings, who you may know from the Fantasy Football Today podcasts, he used to be on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast, and that's how he referred to home runs. He called them dongs. I don't know if it was a Midwestern thing. I don't know, but that was his preferred way to describe them, preferred term to describe a home run, and I guess it kind of stuck. I had never really heard them referred to as that before, but that was his contribution. It's a lasting one. His legacy lives on in the form of the dong, and especially the double dong.
For those who don't know, before I hosted this podcast, I was a faithful listener. I've listened to this podcast since I was in college. So I listened to it for years when it was Nando and Al and Scott and Adam Azer. And then, as it evolved over the years and Chris Towers and Heath Cummings. So I just wanted to honor those guys by continuing to say double dong. And that's why I did it. There's your history lesson. Double dong. Nothing more, nothing less. It means 2 home runs in a game. Let's take our first break. When we return, the interest-o-meter. We'll do that right after this.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Welcome back in. Let's fire up the interest-o-meter. Bunch of players recalled with rosters expanding in September. How much interest do we have in these guys in fantasy baseball? We already spoke about Jordan Walker, who I think is going to rank highest on this meter. The other name or names that we will get to, first up, Kobe Mayo. The Orioles recalled Kobe Mayo. He started on Sunday. He went 1 for 2. And then guess what? He was not in the lineup on Monday. They opted to use Emmanuel Rivera instead of Kobe Mayo. We know Mayo has prodigious power, Scott. We've talked about him all season long, big exit velocities in the minors. He's 42% rostered. Just not sure how much he's actually going to play. Where is Kobe Mayo, the interest-o-meter?
Well, notably, even the game he started, you said he went only 1 for 2. That's because he didn't finish out the game. And based on how the Orioles have used him so far, and just obviously just a couple days, but still, it looks like Kobe Mayo there is mostly to play against left-handers. And that could change, obviously, if he starts contributing in a meaningful way. But I think we can wait to be interested in to show interest in him in fantasy until that happens, until he starts contributing in a meaningful way. So I'm going to give him on the interest-o-meter a 3.
Again, that was Kobe Mayo. Let's slide over to Kyle Manzardo, who was recalled by the Guardians 2 for 3 with a double dong on Sunday, his first 2 career home runs. He did start on Monday as well. He went 0 for 3. Was having a very solid season in the minors, 267 batting average, 20 homers, 946 OPS, nearly as many walks as strikeouts. Decent exit velocities, 21% rostered. Scott, where is Kyle Manzardo on the interest-o-meter?
I'll put him at a 5, so halfway in between Kobe Mayo and Jordan Walker. And it would be much lower if not for that 2-homer game Sunday. But, you know, he finally showed something in the majors, did Kyle Manzardo, after, as you point out, a really good season at AAA. A season that looks pretty Vinny Pasquantino-like, actually, which is the comp we've been using for Kyle Manzardo for years now. And it seems like they're dedicated to using him at DH, at least against righties. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if that continues. A 5, we're still probably talking just deeper rotisserie leagues for adding Manzardo. But obviously, if any of these guys heat up and look like they're going to live up to their potential, then the interest skyrockets. But you know, I manage all of my fantasy baseball teams. I know who the bottom guy is on each of them, and for the most part, I'm not going to drop that bottom guy for Kyle Manzardo. Going to go 5.
Kyle Manzardo, 21% rostered. So again, deeper leagues with corner infield spot. Would you rather add Kyle Manzardo or Spencer Torkelson, who in 16 games since returning from the minors is batting .288 with 4 home runs and a .920 OPS?
Yeah, give me Torkelson, but that's a good example of what I'm talking about, because when Torkelson first got called up, I would have had no interest. Yep. But he's still available in a ton of leagues now that he is doing damage, so you can react later in most cases.
All right, the Brewers recalled DL Hall, who actually made a start on Friday as part of their doubleheader, and he was awesome up against the Reds. 7 shutout innings, 4 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. In that one, he threw 64% of his pitches for strikes. His velocity was up on his fastball and his slider, nearly 1.5 miles per hour on each. DL Hall is 17% rostered, and he is a SPARP on CBS. Where is he on the interest-o-meter?
I believe he is... Okay, so they did send him out down after this start, right? But I guess he's back up.
Yeah, they recalled him on Sunday, I believe.
I don't know how much he's going to start, though.
Okay.
So I'll put it about at a 1, just because of that. And look, he's had a couple starts here, a couple spot starts in the second half. Got 9 strikeouts in 4 2/3 innings in the first of them. It was a shaky start overall, but 9 and 4 2 2/3 innings. Obviously, that looks good. And then this was a great start overall at the Reds. I was especially encouraged by him throwing 64% of his pitches for strikes, walking only one. That's been the big issue for DL Hall. So there is upside here. It's not at all clear that he's going to get a meaningful opportunity for fantasy.
Yeah, the Brewers rotation is currently full with 5 men. If they wanted to go to a 6-man rotation, obviously they can insert DL Hall in there, but they have Freddie Peralta, they have Aaron Savali, Colin Ray, Frankie Montas, and Tobias Myers. Let's talk about Reed Detmers, who was recalled by the Angels and is likely to pitch Tuesday against the Dodgers. 14 starts at AAA since being sent down. 5.54 ERA, 140 whip. Still lots of strikeouts. But we know Detmers is good at getting strikeouts. He's also pretty good at allowing lots of home runs. He's 19% rostered. Scott, where is Reed Detmers on the Interestometer?
Well, I don't want to. I think maybe you buried the lead here with Reed Detmers because, yes, the overall production at AAA wasn't very good. But look at his last 3 starts. They were dominant for Reed Detmers. If I could pull up the numbers here. So he had a 1.29 ERA, 18 base runners in 21 innings, 29 strikeouts in 21 innings. So obviously very low whip, very high K per 9 rate. Swinging strike rate in those 3 starts was 19%. Now, I did look into, what changed for Reed Detmers, and I didn't find a lot of insight into that. In fact, Reed Detmers himself was saying nothing changed except he tried to get back to throwing his slider the way he did in the past. And the slider's always been the key for Reed Detmers. We've seen so many different versions of it over the years, and his performance has kind of risen and fallen with it. But it seems to be on the rise again because that was 3 awesome outings to end his time at AAA. So Interestometer for me and Reed Detmers, I'm going to put it at 5. I'm going to put it the same as Kyle Manzardo, as much as we need starting pitching right now and as little as there is to find on the waiver wire. We'll see how it goes Tuesday because my interest might fade very quickly or it might ramp up very quickly.
Mm-hmm. These last couple names, I think we might be able to move through pretty quickly, but the Dodgers recalled Andy Pages. He did not start on Sunday or Monday. Not sure how much he's going to play. Where is Pages on the Interestometer?
2.
Okay. The Rangers recalled Justin Foscue. He started Sunday, went 0 for 2 with a run scored, and was having a solid season in the minors in, a Justin Foscue kind of way. Solid power, decent batting average, 4% rostered. Where is Justin Foscue on the Interestometer?
I think I don't really see an opportunity for him to play that much. I understand he got the start Sunday. I'm gonna say 1 for Foscue.
Mm-hmm. They did play on Monday as well, and Foscue did not start in that game for whatever that's worth. The Giants recalled Mason Black, and he had a solid start Saturday against the Marlins. 5 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts. Numbers in the PCL this season, not great. He's 2% rostered. Where is Mason Black on the Interestometer?
Yeah, and I don't really see what he excels at. I don't have a lot of interest in the skill set here for Mason Black, so I'm going to put him as a 2.
Okay. The White Sox were called Yairo Iriarte from AA, and I believe he came over in the Dylan Cease trade, right? Does that sound right?
I think that's right.
Yep. Iriarte is 22 years old, had a solid season in the minors, 3.71 ERA, 128 whip, just under a strikeout per inning, but is likely to pitch out of the bullpen. Interestometer on Yairo Iriarte.
1, even if he was starting. He's starting for the White Sox.
And the best for last. I don't know. This one actually might be a 10, Scott. One of your favorite players that ever existed. Jonathan Aranda was recalled on Friday. He started just 1 of 4 games since returning. And in the minors this year, it's kind of been a mess. But as you spoke about on our 5-minute podcast this weekend, he's dealt with some injuries and, some bad breaks, I would say, for Jonathan Aranda. He's 4% rostered. Where is he on the Interestometer?
So he isn't playing that much. But I'm going to put him the same as Kobe Mayo. I'm going to put him as a 3 because I could see him going off and finding his way into more playing time. I think there's a lot to like here for Jonathan Aranda still. If you go look at his numbers in the minors last year, they'll blow your mind. And he was on pace to win the Rays DH job in spring training before a broken finger. And then when he came back from that, he just seemed totally lost. He was striking out way too much, more than Jonathan Aranda we've ever seen from him. And it was true in the minors too. And then he missed time with an oblique injury. I think that allowed the finger to get better for him to get everything right again. And since returning from that at AAA, Jonathan Aranda, he went 10 for 23 with 4 home runs and struck out only 3 times in 6 games. 4 home runs, 3 strikeouts in 6 games. And that's what got him back in the majors. I think the Rays need to see what they have in him finally, even though he's mostly been coming off the bench so far.
One name that hasn't been recalled just yet is Jason Dominguez, though Aaron Boone has said there's still a chance that he could get called up in September. Oh my gosh, all of Twitter and Yankees media, everyone is losing their mind that they didn't call up Jason Dominguez. I think that they should, but if they are sold that Alex Verdugo is still a more useful player than Dominguez right now, then there isn't really a place for Dominguez to play. So if that's their mindset, then that's their mindset, and that's why he was not called up. Instead, the Yankees opted for good old Duke Ellis to get promoted, and that is currently who is on the Yankees roster. Let's get into some other news and notes from the weekend. Fernando Tatis was activated from the IL on Monday. He last played on June 21st before being shelved with a stress reaction in his right femur. He was in the lineup on Monday. Batting second, he went 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Finally, we learned some truth about Kyle Tucker, is that he apparently did suffer some sort of fracture to his shin back in June, which we kind of speculated or thought throughout all of this, because why else would he have been out for this long? Scott, don't teams have to be honest about injuries? I mean, how can we go this long without the Astros just telling the truth about Kyle Tucker? It just seems weird to me.
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that. I don't know. I mean, they could, obviously things get re-diagnosed after the fact, and so maybe they can hide behind that, or maybe that's actually what happened. He needed a deeper bone scan to detect this fracture. I don't know, but I wish we had known from the beginning, because obviously it would have changed things for people who had Kyle Tucker in fantasy, including myself in the podcast league. I had Kyle Tucker as my first round pick. And I just kind of sat around waiting for him to come back, because it seemed like it would be very quick, and it probably cost me a playoff spot. I had the second most points in the podcast league and missed the playoffs. This coming 2 years after I had the most points in the podcast league and missed the playoffs. In between, I did win the podcast league, so that's a little bit of that helps make it feel a little better. But if I hadn't won that championship sandwiched in between those two unjust playoff denials, I would be livid right now, Frankie. Livid.
Speaking of unjust playoff denials, how about unjust playoff eliminations, huh? The Scott White Dynasty League, first round of the playoffs. I scored the second most points out of 8 teams, right? 8 teams make playoffs there. And I got eliminated because I was facing the top team. How about that?
Well, you weren't. You were facing the 4th seed, to be clear.
Well,
but it is probably the best
highest
team.
Scoring team in the first round.
I gotcha. Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah, not great. I'm pretty sure at this time last year, I said that we should change the playoff format in our podcast league to, of the 6 teams that make the playoffs, it should be the top 5 records, and then the 6th spot in the playoffs goes to the most points scored after that. And I just didn't remember to change the rules coming into the season. So I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily like that anyway. I mean, head to head is head to head. And even though I scored a ton of points, I didn't get it done head to head wise. So, and look, the timing of the Tucker injury, to get back to the original point, it may have contributed to that. I mean, I was probably blowing everybody out early in the year with Tucker. And then once I lost my first round pick, it became much harder.
With all that said, on Kyle Tucker, getting back to him, it does sound like he could be activated later this week, either Wednesday or Thursday. assuming everything else checks out all right. Garrett Cole exited his start Monday due to a right calf cramp. They did say cramp and not strain. I think that's important to pay attention to here. So perhaps just dehydrated. They were, he was pitching in Texas. He did pitch very well before leaving as well. 6 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts, 14 whiffs on 82 pitches there for Garrett Cole. Bernal Blanco is the most likely candidate to move to the bullpen when the team shifts to a 5-man rotation later this week. Blanco is 95% rostered. Scott, do you think it's okay to drop Blanco now, or let's just wait to see if this actually happens first?
Oh, let's wait. I mean, Justin Verlander could go back on the IL. I don't think that would surprise anybody. And innings-wise, Blanco, when I looked into it, it was a few weeks ago at this point, but he did not seem to be at major risk, like they needed to preserve his innings. He's also a lot older than you probably realize. I believe he's in his 30s already. Yeah. So there's that's less incentive to preserve his arms, as ghoulish as that might sound. His arms, I said arms, his arm. I don't think they care about Ronel Blanco's left arm at all.
Ronel Blanco, 31 years old. I would not have guessed that either. Yeah. Alex Bregman has missed 4 straight with soreness in his elbow. He missed time in mid-August with that same injury, but then returned. He started 9 straight, and now he's been out of the lineup for the next 4 games. Vinny Pasquantino, bad news for Vinny P.
Baby.
As he was placed in the IL Friday with a fractured right thumb, he'll miss 6 to 8 weeks, effectively ending his regular and I think postseason, unless the Royals somehow made it to the World Series. Obviously feel bad for him. He's having a huge second half, and the Royals are having a great year too. So it's a big loss for them as well, losing Vinny Pasquantino. The Pirates manager, Derek Shelton, has finally stepped in and demoted David Bednar. He's been temporarily removed from the closer role and will pitch in lower leverage situations. We also have less than a month left in the season, so not sure he will have enough time to regain that role. Bednar is down to 60% rostered. Is he all right to drop?
In shallower leagues, but I would put him in the same category as Paul Sewald, Craig Kimbrell. Though the longer this goes on with Kimbrell, the more droppable he looks. And obviously, when I say you might want to hold on to any of those 3, it's in deeper categories leagues where saves are always scarce, where there's always a big bidding war for anybody who emerges on the waiver wire. So for the most part, yeah, Bednar is droppable. I'd rather have Chapman than him, Aroldis Chapman, though it's not clear that Chapman is the guy replacing Bednar, sadly enough.
I do think he will be the highest leverage reliever, which on Saturday, Aroldis Chapman pitched in the 9th inning and he picked up his 5th save. And then on Monday, Chapman pitched in the 8th inning with a 1-run lead facing the top of the Cubs lineup. So very clearly the highest leverage situation. He got out of it. And then Dennis Santana closed it out for his 3rd save.
I will point out, though, with Dennis Santana, who hasn't been on anybody's radar as a source for saves all year, I'm sure, his last 10 appearances, which covers, I think, like 12 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk allowed. So he has been effective, much more effective lately than his season numbers would say. I don't think he needs to be picked up outside of NL-only leagues, and I do hope it's just a one-off here for Dennis Santana with Chapman working the 8th, because I think Chapman could still be a great closer. He's one of the best all time. I don't know why there would be any conflict there with who replaces Bednar.
Justin Steele was scratched from his start Tuesday after experiencing elbow soreness. Kyle Hendricks will start in his place. That sounds, a little ominous anytime we hear of an elbow. So we'll wait to learn more on Justin Steele. Alec Boehm has missed 3 straight with left-hand discomfort. He's day-to-day and will have a chance to return on Tuesday. We have some Dodger pitcher updates. As Dave Roberts said Saturday, Tyler Glasnow could return to the rotation in mid-September in a best-case scenario. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will make his next rehab start at AAA on Tuesday. He threw 2 innings in his first rehab start, and Clayton Kershaw was placed on the IL with a bone spur in his left big toe, and apparently he's in a walking boot and will be sent for more imaging. So, lots going on there.
Probably can drop Clayton Kershaw.
Yep. Jacob deGrom is likely to make one more rehab start before rejoining the Rangers rotation. His latest rehab start was on Sunday. He threw 2 2/3 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts. He's up to 73% rostered. Max Scherzer said he feels fine physically and has made a change in his mechanics that allows him to throw without pain. He'll begin a rehab assignment on Saturday.
But just to back up for a second, I do think Jacob deGrom, anywhere he's still available, which is only like a quarter of CBS leagues now, you need to pick him up. I imagine he'll be ready to go 75, 80 pitches next week for the Rangers. And he can do a lot of damage on 75, 80 pitches. And then he probably gets at least 2 more starts after that first one. So at 3 or 4 total starts, I would imagine, for deGrom could make all the difference in your league, potentially.
Yep. Both Ketel Marte and Christian Walker could return during the D-backs' upcoming road trip. Marte has been out with an ankle injury, while Walker has been nursing an oblique. Ozzy Albies has begun doing some baseball activities, including light hitting off a tee. He's been out since late July after fracturing his left wrist. Yu Darvish threw 66 pitches over 4 innings on Friday in a controlled game. He's expected to rejoin the Padres rotation Wednesday against the Tigers. There's a very good chance Luis Gil will rejoin the Yankees rotation this weekend against the Cubs. Clark Schmidt is also expected back this weekend. Next question was, are we looking at a 6-man rotation? But it might depend on what happens now with Garrett Cole. So,
yeah. I think that's the most likely scenario, a 6-man rotation. If it is really just a cramp in Cole's calf, which I had to be careful how I said all those sounds. But if Cole were to go on the IL, that would make that simple.
JD Martinez was placed on the paternity list, which means he'll miss between 1 and 3 games. Anthony Rizzo was activated on Sunday. Ben Rice was optioned back to AAA. Scott, who would you rather speculate on for a corner infield spot, Anthony Rizzo or Kyle Manzardo?
I am going to say Rizzo.
Okay. Trevor Story began a rehab assignment at AAA on Sunday. He had shoulder surgery way back in April, but appears close to returning. 15% rostered is Trevor Story. Any interest there?
No.
Okay. Drew Thorpe had season-ending surgery to remove a bone spur in his right elbow, and some other players who went on the IL this weekend: Cal Quantrill with right triceps inflammation, Ramon Urias with a right ankle sprain, and Vidal Brujan with a right shoulder AC joint sprain.
You know what? Mild interest in Story in like a 15-team roto league.
All right. Let's take our final break. And when we return, all of the waiver wire moves. We've got some pitchers, we've got hitters, we've got the drop-o-meter. We'll do that right after this.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Welcome back in. Let's talk waiver wire pitchers from the long Labor Day weekend. And the first group includes Shane Baz, who pitched well up against the Padres. 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. He's mostly pitched well. We're still waiting for more whiffs to come on those secondary pitches. Gavin Williams turned in probably his best start of the season at the Royals. 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 6 strikeouts. He had 10 whiffs on 98 pitches. Only 3 quality starts in 12 tries this season. Jameson Taillon pitched a gem up against the Pirates. 7 shutout innings with 3 strikeouts for him. His previous 6 starts, pretty bad. 6.55 ERA and a 1.36 whip. And Cody Bradford continues his great run, this time up against the A's. 7 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, had 14 whiffs on 97 pitches. Last 5 starts for Bradford, 2.61 ERA and a .87 whip. Scott, how would you rank Bradford, Taillon, Gavin Williams, and Shane Baz?
I would put Bradford number 1. And it's kind of surprising how little attention he's getting with the waiver wire being starved for good starting pitchers right now, because he has gone his last 5 starts. Cody Bradford, 2.61 ERA, .87 whip, 8.1 K per 9. And he's gone at least 6 innings in 4 of those 5 starts. He's throws a ton of strikes, decent strikeout guy. A lot of fly balls, which limits hits, does make him vulnerable to the long ball. But if he's walking so few, I think Cody Bradford could continue to be a solid contributor in fantasy. After him, Jameson Taillon feels like the safest. He had been on a bad stretch there with a 6.55 ERA in his previous 6, but control artist like Cody Bradford, consistently works deep into games. He did make a notable change here in his arsenal to find the success against the Pirates on Monday. 35% sinkers instead of 9%. And cut down on the four-seamer and curveball usage. Those are his 2 hardest hit pitches. So I think hopefully Jameson Taillon has figured out a way out of his tailspin here. I'll go Gavin Williams third. Don't entirely trust him yet, but 2 pretty good starts in a row, and both of them he basically eliminated his changeup. Not that he threw it a lot previously, but it was just getting crushed, and I think abandoning that changeup entirely might help Gavin Williams continue to pitch well. Shane Baz I'll go fourth. I just haven't seen enough reason for optimism there. His good starts have been merely decent.
All right, the next group includes JP Sears, who had himself a great start at the Rangers, 7 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. He has gone 7+ innings in 5 of his last 6. Again, that's JP Sears. Albert Suarez turned in a strong start in Coors Field, 7 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, 12 whiffs on 95 pitches. Had a great August, 1.19 ERA and a .99 whip. Luis Ortiz of the Pirates had a great start at the Guardians, 6 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts for him. That's back-to-back scoreless outings. And Matthew Boyd, he's actually pitched pretty well here with the Guardians. Took a tough luck loss up against the Pirates. 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, 18 whiffs on 90 pitches for Matthew Boyd. Scott, any interest in any of these names? They're a little bit lower down the roster rate, but JP Sears, Albert Suarez, Luis Ortiz, and Matthew Boyd.
So the time to pick up Suarez was this week with him scheduled to face the White Sox. He had obviously been pitching well since returning to the rotation. I don't really understand it, but got to take advantage of matchups like that. I don't know. The one with the most upside is probably Boyd, but the case for Boyd is the same that it's been for like 5 years now, and he's rarely made good on it. So he misses bats at a nice rate since returning to the majors. 13.1% swinging strike rate. That's of course very good. Very high fly ball rate, as has always been the case for Matthew Boyd. So the hope is that those fly balls, enough of them stay in the park, that his ability to miss bats, we can take advantage of it because the ERA isn't inflated. But how many times have we been down that road before with Boyd? I don't know that we should expect it to go any differently this time. So in terms of usability, I'm going to go Suarez 1, JP Sears 2, then Boyd, and Luis Ortiz 4th. I don't see a lot to get excited about there with Ortiz.
Last point I wanted to make
He's just
on
a tease. He's just an Ortiz.
Last point I wanted to make on JP Sears is, like Suarez, a great matchup this week going up against the Seattle Mariners. So I know we're kind of past the point, but if you play in a daily lineup league and you're looking for some streamers, I think Sears and Suarez are both totally fine there. Some names in deeper leagues. Alex Cobb returned Sunday with a great start up against the Pirates. 6 innings, 1 unearned run with 6 strikeouts. And Joey Estes put together a quality start at the Rangers. 6 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. Last 8 starts for Estes, it's a 2.88 ERA, a .98 whip. The underlying numbers do not buy it at all. I'm pretty sure I say that every single time I bring up Joey Estes. But he also faces the Mariners this week, so maybe it could work.
Yeah, maybe. The thing Joey Ortiz has going for him is kind of what I said.
Joey Estes.
Sorry, Joey Estes. My mind was still on that dumb Ortiz joke. Okay, Joey Estes, the thing he has going for him is sort of what I laid out for Cody Bradford. Throws a ton of strikes and puts the ball in the air a lot. So, if the fly balls are limiting hits, but aren't limiting home runs, but then there aren't many walks, then those home runs are mostly of the solo variety. Maybe it won't be so bad. So I'm less interested overall in Joey Estes than in Cody Bradford, but it is a similar profile, and I could see it working out. Alex Cobb is more interesting here. In fact, Alex Cobb might be more interesting than anyone in the previous group, too, which remember included Albert Suarez, JP Sears, and Matthew Boyd. I've never been the biggest Cobb fan. There have been some Cobb enthusiasts over the years, but when he has that splitter working, he can put together a bunch of really good starts. And it seemed to be back to form with his return from a cracked fingernail. Who knows how much his finger was bothering him prior to that. And maybe that explains why the splitter wasn't doing much for Alex Cobb, but pretty good track record for him. Whips tend to be on the high side, but respectable ERA, respectable strikeout rate, and could be useful down the stretch.
Two pretty highly rated pitching prospects made their major league debuts this weekend. Rhett Lauder of the Reds pitched against the Brewers, 4 innings, 1 run, 4 walks, 6 strikeouts, did have 10 whiffs on 77 pitches. And Angels top pitching prospect Caden Dana turned in a quality start up against the Mariners, 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, 4 walks, had 13 whiffs on 95 pitches. He's only 20 years old. We spoke about this last week with him, but the minor league numbers were really, really good at Double-A. Scott, were you putting in any bids this weekend, maybe in some of those deeper leagues on a Rhett Lauder or Caden Dana?
I really wasn't. I'm not counting on them being that useful down the stretch, and I was discouraged that each of them walked 4 in their debut. It is only one start, I get it, but especially for Rhett Lauder, like I don't think that there's enough swing and miss in his arsenal for him to be anything less, to get away with being anything less than an elite control pitcher. So Rhett Lauder can't afford those walks, and Caden Dana, he threw 57% of his pitches for strikes. It wasn't just a handful of walks. He was not really in the zone much at all. And I think it's a big ask here at age 20, going straight from Double-A, to think Caden Dana is going to be a big difference maker. He's not an especially big swing and miss pitcher either. Not quite as low as Rhett Lauder as far as that goes. But yeah, I think it's a stretch to think either of these will help much.
All right, let's fire up the drop-o-meter for, I've got 5 starting pitchers on this week's drop-o-meter. And first up is Jake Irvin, who got rocked by the Cubs, 4 2/3 innings, 7 runs, 6 strikeouts, last 10 starts, a 6.55 ERA and a 1.55 whip. He's down to 68% rostered. Scott, where is Jake Irvin on the drop-o-meter?
I guess I'll say 10. It's probably a little less than 10, but I don't think we need to invest much more time on Jake Irvin on this podcast this year.
Taj Bradley on the podcast, which dropped on Sunday afternoon. We had a mailbag question about Taj Bradley. Where is he on the drop-o-meter? It was tough for us to answer because we didn't know what he did on Friday at that point. Well, he got destroyed up against the Padres, 2 1/3 innings, 8 hits, 8 runs. Last 6 starts for Bradley. It's a 9.85 ERA and a 1.84 whip. Where is Taj Bradley on the drop-o-meter?
I'm going to put it right at a 5. I'd rather not drop him because I think, like, I don't want to lose sight of just how good he was earlier this year. He had a 9-start stretch with a 0.82 ERA, 0.89 whip, 10.6 K per 9. I mean, looked like an emergent ace. And I think that could click back into place for Taj Bradley and potentially sink you. Somebody starts him against you. But in shallower leagues where roster space is limited, I understand you can't start Taj Bradley right now, and there's a chance you could sneak him through. If you did drop him, I think there's a good chance the shallower the league. I will point out, and this is something I hadn't noticed before, his downfall here with the 9.73 ERA in his last 6 starts, it coincides with his splitter losing some of its vertical movement. And that's something Kevin Cash, the Rays manager, noted after the last start. So I think if they're identifying a problem there, that makes it even more hopeful they'll be able to correct it for Taj Bradley. But obviously he's unstartable right now.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest point you made there, Scott, is dropping him and then someone else potentially picking him up and using him against you if for some crazy reason Taj Bradley gets back on track. But if he's on my fantasy team, I don't think there's any way I could start him anytime soon. But again, just, protecting against yourself and maybe Taj Bradley,
if he gives up 2 hits and strikes out 10 in his next start, I think he immediately becomes usable again. If the movement on that splitter seems back to normal, I'm not saying he'd be must start, but I think you could consider it at that point. That's how quickly things could change for him.
All right, let's talk about Zebby Matthews, who got crushed by the Blue Jays. 2 innings, 10 hits, 9 earned runs. He gave up 3 homers in that one. Was pretty good before this start, but he's only 36% rostered, so not like he's very, he's not universally rostered or anything. Where is Zebby Matthews on the drop-o-meter?
10.
Okay. What about Tyler Anderson, who's been struggling lately over his last 4 starts, a 7.40 ERA and a 1.94 WHIP?
I know. Once I I
I
opened my mind to Tyler Anderson potentially being a useful fantasy option, he falls off a cliff. He falls off a cliff. I've been having a difficult time with consonant sounds in this whole podcast. Sorry about that. Yeah, he falls off a cliff. But what's interesting is the reason I became open-minded to Tyler Anderson is because he started getting a lot more whiffs, and he's continued to do that even as he struggled. It's just there've been some walks and just generally not look good. So drop-o-meter for Tyler Anderson, I'm going to put it at about a 6.5. 6.5.
So more droppable than Taj Bradley.
Yes.
Okay. Last name on this list is Justin Verlander, who was not very good at the Reds. 4 2/3 innings, 5 runs, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts in 3 starts since returning from the IL, a 6.75 ERA and a 1.70 WHIP. He's still 93% rostered.
7, and I think I'm being generous. I just don't think Justin Verlander has much of anything left.
All right, let's get into the waiver wire hitters from the weekend. And Eugenio Suarez added 3 more home runs this weekend, 49 games since July 7th. He is batting .303 with 17 homers, 52 RBI, and an OPS approaching 1,000. The fact that he's 78% rostered, it kind of feels criminal that there are still leagues that Suarez is not rostered in. But would you drop any of these names to pick up Suarez? They're all over 80% rostered. Ryan McMahon.
Yeah, at this point, we should probably value Suarez over McMahon.
All right. What about Brendan Donovan?
Oh, yeah.
What about Willie Castro?
Yes.
And Max Muncy?
That's the closest call. Muncy has the best track record of this group and is in the best lineup, obviously. He's more startable than Suarez right now. Suarez is more startable than Muncy right now, so I guess if push came to shove, I'd do it. It's by the way, it's not just you gave numbers for a slightly different time frame than I have here. I have since July 1st, so like a week earlier than the time frame you gave. It's not just that Suarez happens to have good numbers. He's striking out a lot less during that time too, so there may be some underlying changes behind this hot streak that's difficult to call just a streak at this point, given that it's gone on for 2 months.
Mm-hmm. If you need a catcher in a 1-catcher league, 2 names that could be available. Austin Wells had a big game on Friday, 2 for 4 with a double dong, 4 RBI. He added 2 more hits on Saturday. He has now started 5 straight. I know we had that little stretch where they were facing some lefties and he wasn't in the lineup, but Austin Wells has been really good now, basically since the middle of June. 282 batting average, 11 homers, 35 RBI, and OPS over 900 since June 11th, excuse me. And Shea Langoliers quietly has had a breakout season, 2 for 4 with a double dong, 4 RBI on Labor Day here. His 25 homers are second among catchers, and he's 71% rostered. Shallow leagues, 1-catcher league, Scott, but who do you prefer, Langoliers or Austin Wells?
Langoliers by a lot. Wells sits too often. And I know that batting average is unpalatable for Shea Langoliers, but in the second half, he's batting .248, so that's much better.
Okay. Any interest in these 2 outfielders? Taylor Ward has been picking things up lately. Last 12 games, he's batting .298 with 3 homers and 1 steal. And Victor Robles, he's also picking things back up. Last 6 games, he has 4 multi-hit games, 1 homer, 4 steals during that time. He obviously has performed quite well since joining the Mariners. Any interest here, Scott? Taylor Ward or Victor Robles?
And Robles was a sleeper hitter for this week, so already making good on that. We've seen Ward get really hot for stretches in the past. I'm skeptical that that's what's happening here. It'd be hard for me to just trust it's happening and put him in my lineup. But it could be. It could be. We could look back 3 weeks from now and say, oh, Taylor Ward was one of the best players in September. That would not be surprising. Robles, I think, has more obvious utility as a base stealer, especially while he's hitting well. But I might look at the schedule too. More righties is obviously good for Robles, and Taylor Ward has great splits against lefties. So if the Angels have a bunch of those coming up, and 3 on the schedule this current week, actually, then he might be worth using.
All right. How do you rank these middle infield options? Ernie Clement had himself a big game on Sunday, 2 for 5 with a sock and a shoe. 53 games since the start of July. He's batting .260 with 8 home runs and 8 steals. Again, that's Ernie Clement. Brooks Lee returned from the IL on Sunday and went 2 for 4 with his 3rd home run on Monday.
Why wasn't he on the interest-o-meter?
It's a good question. Well, I guess he was coming back from the IL. He wasn't part of the roster expansion, but maybe I was being a little bit too technical with that.
Too technical.
Yeah. You know me.
Okay.
Will Wagner is the other name on this list, and he had a massive game on Saturday, 5 for 6 with his 2nd home run. And through 17 games, he's batting .345. He's got 2 homers, a .919 OPS. He's barely striking out. Yep. He's also not playing every day. I wonder if the Blue Jays are trying to keep his rookie eligibility for next year, and maybe that's why they're doing this, but it seems weird that they're not playing him every day. Scott, how would you rank Clement, Brooks Lee, and Will Wagner?
So I don't think it's so much that, because the likelihood of Will Wagner being a big rookie of the year candidate, it seems unlikely. He's also somebody who should theoretically walk a lot, though he has only done that twice. But, since rookie eligibility is tied to at-bats, walking a lot helps to keep those lower. Will Wagner's my favorite of this group by a long shot. Other than the lack of walks, everything he was doing at AAA has carried over to the majors. It's like the level looks exactly the same to Will Wagner. And I think if it continues, he's going to find his way into more playing time. Interestingly, him sitting has nothing to do with his handedness. He's a left-handed hitter.
I know. He's sitting against righties. It's weird.
He starts 2 and he sits 1. He starts 2 and he sits 1. And I think that's going to change. And I would love to have him in Roto Leagues as a middle infield option, even more so than Brooks Lee, who hasn't done much with his major league opportunities so far, but he is starting at shortstop, so maybe he'll turn it around. He did have here on Monday, Brooks Lee, his hardest hit ball as a major leaguer so far, a double that he hit 107.4 miles per hour, almost 3 miles per hour harder than his previous hard hit ball, and about as hard as his hardest hit ball in the minors. So maybe that's a sign that Brooks Lee's getting more comfortable.
All right, let's get into some leftovers from the weekend. Still lots to get to. 5 pitchers who are on a great run right now. Framber Valdez was pulled after 7 no-hit innings up against the Royals this weekend. And over his last 9 starts, he has a 1.98 ERA, a .81 whip, 11.3 K per 9 during that time. So he has been amazing. Pablo Lopez has had a big second half, 7 2/3 shutout innings with 3 strikeouts. Last 12 starts for him, it's a 2.38 ERA and a .99 whip. Yusei Kikuchi was amazing against the Royals, 7 innings, 1 run, 12 strikeouts. And in 6 starts with the Astros, Kikuchi has a 2.57 ERA and a .94 whip. Jose Barrios, over his last 5 starts, it's a 1.56 ERA, .87 whip. He's really turned things back on there as well. And Sean Manaea, who we've talked a lot about. It was a great matchup. Got the White Sox, 7 shutout innings, 5 strikeouts. Last 15 starts dating back to mid-June, 2.70 ERA, .96 whip for Sean Manaea. 5 names on this list, Scott. Anything you'd like to add? Manaea, Barrios, Kikuchi, Pablo Lopez, and Framber Valdez.
Yeah, I think as long as Manaea stays away from that cutter, which he's basically done for his last 7 starts, I'm willing to trust him more weeks than not. Depends on the matchup, but obviously deserves to be rostered, and that's what his rate suggests. Kikuchi is the frustrating one here. You say Kikuchi because he has starts like this on occasion, and you think, okay, maybe he's turning the corner, going to live up to his full potential here. as good as he is at missing bats, but this was his first start in 9. The 7-inning starts against the Royals. His first start in 9 where he went even 6 innings. It's hard to be useful in fantasy when you're not going the minimum required for a quality start. So Kikuchi remains somebody who you really gotta be careful about using in most cases.
If anyone was wondering why Framber Valdez got taken out after the 7 no-hit innings, he did have 98 pitches. I feel like they probably could have pushed him a little bit, but here's what Joe Espada had to say. Those are personal goals, but me as a manager, I'm thinking more of the team. I'm thinking of where he's at when he comes off the mound and how he looks. And that last inning, how he looks, you have a conversation with him where you think, and you have to gauge on what you see and what you hear from him. We have a really good bullpen that makes my decision a little bit easier when you got guys back in there that you can rely on. So it just seems like, maybe it was like a body language thing, or they talked to him. They cared more about just winning the game and closing it out with the bullpen, whatever it might be. But I was a little surprised that they didn't let him go longer.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Some hitters who remained hot this weekend as well. Corbin Carroll, 2 for 4 with a sock in the shoe on Friday. He added another homer on Saturday. He wrapped up a tremendous August where he hit 280 with 11 home runs, 2 steals, and a 1042 OPS. Lawrence Butler, who we mentioned up near the top, last 11 games, he's batting .426 with 7 homers and 3 steals. He's now up to 81% rostered. Dansby Swanson stayed hot last 28 games for him. .296 batting average, 4 homers, 8 steals, and OPS right around 850. Another huge weekend for Jackson Chourio. And in the second half, he's batting .338, 9 homers, 10 steals, 981 OPS. And Junior Caminero continues to impress. He hit another home run on Saturday, added 2 hits on Monday, and so far batting .275, 3 homers, 2 steals, and an 837 OPS. Lots of fun names here, Scott. Caminero, Chourio, Swanson, Butler, and Corbin Carroll.
Yeah, I think Caminero's time has come. Jackson Chourio's time has clearly come. So you put the numbers for the second half. So if you go back to June 1st, which is when every hitter's season seemed to turn around, it's not just that Jackson Chourio's batting average, home run, stolen bases are up. The exit velocity, average exit velocity is up like 2 miles per hour, and the strikeout rate has gone. First 2 months versus last 3 months, the strikeout rate for Chourio has gone from 27% to 16%. So I would say Chourio's here to stay. I'm still a big believer in Lawrence Butler. I've seen a lot of skepticism out there in the fantasy industry. Not really sure why. He's 24. He hits the ball hard. He runs well, and he's striking out a lot less. And that's coincided with him turning his season around here at the start of July, striking out less than 20% of the time. You're hitting the ball that hard and making contact that frequently, you're gonna be good. And I think Lawrence Butler's good. And finally, Corbin Carroll. If you had told me before the start of the season that he would have a month where he hit 11 home runs, that's the only context you gave me. Corbin Carroll, he'll hit 11 home runs 1 month. He might have been the first overall pick because that's what we were concerned about. It's just funny how his season's played out. Very interested in seeing how September goes because he could put himself back in as an obvious first rounder, I think, if he has a huge September.
Yeah, the Lawrence Butler thing, I haven't seen that skepticism. I also, I guess, haven't been online as much recently. But yeah, the plate discipline is good. I tried looking at some underlying stuff, like 84% zone contact is good. He doesn't chase. He doesn't swing and miss. He hits the ball hard. It's a good barrel rate. Solid against lefties. I don't know. I mean, everything seems to be there for Lawrence Butler. So, yeah, I'm pretty much there with you. I'm not backing down. I feel pretty excited about him.
When I say there's been a lot, I may have seen like 2 people expressing. That's a lot in my mind,
Fair enough.
Maybe it's less prevalent than I think, but it might just be that even you look at his minor league track record, it's not that impressive. But we knew the tools were there, and if he put it all together, he could be an impact player, and it sure seems like he's put it all together.
I had a buddy of mine ask, excuse me, Where do I think Jackson Chourio is going to be drafted next year? Like what round?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good question, man. I mean, the fact that he's 20 years old and he's breaking out like this, he's going to go 2020. I mean, he could approach 25 when it's all said and done. I could see like third round for Chourio.
Yeah, I could see it in Roto.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and I don't think that's a huge stretch. We'll see how it looks once we start lining up the names.
All right, some other pitchers who've pitched well since coming off the IL. Ronaldo Lopez in 3 starts since returning. It's a 1.59 ERA and a 1 whip on the nose. He's looked great. Joe Musgrove in 5 starts since returning, a 1.30 ERA and a .80 whip, right around a strikeout per inning. And Zach Eflin, I kind of cheated because it's only 1 start since coming off the IL, but he was in Coors Field, 7 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts. He had 18 whiffs on 85 pitches, and he more than doubled his curveball usage. I don't know if that was a Coors Field thing. I think usually you would go away from your breaking pitches in Coors Field, but
because it flattens them.
The opposite here.
And that's what I said when Zach Eflin was traded to the Orioles. Like the thing that would convince me he's going to turn over a new leaf is if he starts throwing his curveball more. If I see his curveball usage go up, it hadn't happened until this first start back from the IL when 42% curveballs. That's the most he's thrown in any start all year.
Yep.
And throwing it more seemed to be behind his breakout last year. It is his best pitch, I believe. But you're right. Since it happened at Coors Field, you don't know if it was because Zach Eflin changed his approach specifically for that environment. Obviously got good results. Maybe that'll encourage him to throw the curveball more. I take it as a good sign, but inconclusive that that Eflin is indeed turning over a new leaf. Not that he's been so bad just as he was.
Yeah. Hey, 5 starts with the Orioles now for Eflin. Obviously an IL stint mixed in there. 1.95 ERA, .96 whip, over a strikeout per inning for Zach Eflin. Some pitchers who had bounce back outings. Blake Snell was his last time out before this, 6 walks against the Mariners. Now against the Marlins, 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts for Blake Snell. Seth Lugo, a big bounce back at the Astros, 7 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts. And Bailey Ober, who had that just terrible outing 2 turns ago, bounced back with a great start against the Blue Jays. 6 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 8 strikeouts in that one. Anything on Ober, Lugo, and Snell?
So I'll point out something Lugo said. It wasn't that illuminating, but he said he's been working on stuff after having a 5.58 ERA during an 8-start stretch to get back on track here against the Astros with a very good start. He said just a little bit of feel with some of my pitches, how to get some breaking balls to some better locations, be more consistent with my fastball. Again, it's not much, but you like to hear when a pitcher's struggling that he's working on things, especially when he seems to have a turnaround start. If I could just backtrack to the previous group for a second, I don't know that there's much cause for Reynaldo Lopez skepticism anymore. I know it's kind of surrounded his whole season. He still has an ERA of 2 exactly. But since coming back from the IL, he's been getting so many strikeouts, so many swinging strikes. Like he just looks great.
And ground balls, which is
yeah,
something he wasn't getting earlier.
The 2 ERA is still probably too good to be true, but that doesn't mean Reynaldo Lopez isn't good. And I think I'd approach him as close to a must start the rest of the way. And he's been getting it done against good offenses even.
Mm-hmm. Some other pitching leftovers, 2 good and 1 bad. Tarek Skubal continues to dominate, 8 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, 16 whiffs on 98 pitches up against the Red Sox. And it doesn't look like he will be limited on a per start basis. Again, maybe they're stretching those starts out a little bit more, so we're not going to get a 2-star week, but obviously Skubal is still awesome. 16 wins for him are the most in baseball. Zach Wheeler, speaking of awesome, he was exactly that against the Braves, 7 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts there. And someone who was not awesome, George Kirby at the Angels, 5 2/3 innings, 5 runs, 3 homers allowed. And over his last 4 outings, it's a 7.20 ERA, a 1.75 whip. Strikeouts are down. Home runs are way up during that span. Scott, anything on Kirby, Wheeler, and Skubal?
So yeah, it was nice to see Skubal bounce back from the 5-inning start with with him going 8, and maybe suggests that the Tigers' plans to ramp him down were maybe a little exaggerated. I don't know. There's still a month to go, but Skubal obviously is an ace. So George Kirby struggled for a while now, 6.84 ERA in his 5 August starts. He says, it's very frustrating. It's a little bit of mechanics, and I'm trying to look at video and stuff like that. But it's so small. I know it's so small, but I don't want to. I know it's so small, so I don't want to look into it too much. That's the frustrating part. I don't really know what it is yet, but I know it's tiny. So, just keep working at it. And I like when players say things that sound like things I would say. Whatever is wrong with Kirby, it's got to be so small. That's a line I use a lot when a pitcher or a hitter is struggling. And he's putting it that way too. Makes me wonder if George Kirby's listening. Is he a regular listener or not? I don't know.
Hey, the way that we talk about players who are struggling and then the very next day they go out and have an awesome game, I wouldn't be surprised, man. Yeah, did you hear what those FBT guys said about us this time? Let's go out and have a big game. Let's get into some hitting leftovers. Brent Rooker continues his stellar breakout season, however you want to describe it. 2 home runs on Friday. He went 2 for 4 with a steal on Saturday, 4 more hits on Sunday. He's batting .295, 33 homers, 949 OPS. Very interesting name for 2025. Don't really know how I'm going to approach Brent Rooker. Looks like Freddie Freeman really needed those 3 days off last week because since he's returned, he has 4 home runs in 4 games since coming back on Friday. It feels inevitable that Shohei Ohtani will go 50-50, maybe more, because sock in the shoe on Friday, another homer on Saturday, and then 3 more steals on Monday. He is up to 44 homers, 46 steals on the season. Mookie Betts looks like he has not missed a beat since coming back from the IL. 20 games since returning, 289 batting average, 4 homers, 4 steals, and 862 OPS. Yordan Alvarez had a 2-homer game on Sunday, and Pete Alonso wrapped up his best power month in August, where he hit 8 home runs and 852 OPS. He has 30 home runs. It still feels like it's just been a so-so kind of year for Pete Alonso.
Yeah, it does. It just kind of a down year, but not really like a bad year. I think part of the problem is that his run and RBI pace are so far off. He's not on pace for 80 of either. Or wait, that's not pace, is it? That's
total so far. Yeah.
Okay, scratch that. But it does feel like not as many as we're used to seeing for Pete Alonso. That what is he on pace for actually?
Less than 100 in both, based on that, right?
Yeah.
So
that hasn't helped.
Which is kind of weird because the Mets have had a good lineup.
Yeah, I know. It is kind of weird, isn't it? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it does add to that sort of feeling like, Pete Alonso wasn't really worth the pick I invested in him.
Mm-hmm. Some bullpen updates from the weekend. For the Orioles on Friday, Sir Anthony Dominguez got the 9th inning with a 3-run lead. He gave up 1 run, but picked up his 8th save. For the Dodgers on Friday, Michael Kopech entered in the 6th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a hit and a walk, but he got out of it. Seems like pretty bad usage here for Kopech, but Kershaw only pitched 1 inning in that game, so I think it was all hands on deck. They needed all their relievers. And then on Saturday, Evan Phillips.
I don't know that Kopech's happening. I got to be honest. Dave Roberts seems to have no inclination to anoint a closer. Yeah. And Evan Phillips is getting involved more and more. He got the save Saturday.
Yeah. Kopech had pitched 3 of 4 days entering Saturday, but maybe I'm just making excuses for him. Who knows? For the Giants on Friday, Ryan Walker struck out 2 for his 5th save. For the Cubs on Saturday, Jorge Lopez got the 8th inning with a 2-run lead facing the heart of the Nationals lineup. He walked 1 and got out of it. Porter Hodge then got the 9th inning, and he picked up his 3rd save of the season. Do you have a lean here, Scott? Cubs bullpen?
Oh, I think it's got to be Porter Hodge, especially. Did you see what Jorge Lopez did on Monday?
Yeah, I think he gave up, 3 or 4 runs, right?
4 runs. Yeah, and working in a non-save chance, obviously. And then he set up for Hodge over the weekend. So, maybe Craig Counsell is going to go back and forth with those two. It remains to be seen, but for most of Counsell's career, he's had a true closer, even Hector Neris when he wasn't doing that well. So I think the lean here has to be Porter Hodge, the rookie.
For the Tigers on Saturday, lefty Tyler Holton walked one but picked up his 6th save. And then on Sunday, Jason Foley pitched a clean 9th inning for his 20th save. I was going to say, it kind of feels like maybe just a committee approach, both of those guys getting saves, Tyler Holton and Jason Foley. Holton also started a game as an opener on Monday, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the lean here is Foley. Not that he's a great closer, but I think AJ Hinch in August kind of came back around to him after moving away in July.
For the Phillies on Saturday, Carlos Estevez struck out 2 for his 23rd save. Jeff Hoffman worked the 8th inning in that one. For the Rockies on Saturday, Tyler Kinley got the 9th inning with a 2-run lead. He walked one, but picked up his 8th save. For the Marlins on Saturday, Calvin Fauché struck out 2 for his 5th save. And then on Sunday, he struck out the side for his 6th save. For the Rays on Sunday, Edwin Uceta recorded 4 perfect outs across the 7th and 8th innings with the game tied. And then Manuel Rodriguez got the 9th inning. He gave up a run and took his 4th loss of the season. For the Angels on Sunday, Ben Joyce got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a hit, but struck out 1 for his 4th save. And he has each of the Angels' last 3 saves. Again, that's Ben Joyce. Scott, how would you rank this group? All names that could be out there on waiver wire still: Ryan Walker, Kopech, Dominguez, Fauché, and Ben Joyce.
Can we put Porter Hodge in there too?
Yep.
Can we put Aroldis Chapman in there too?
Let's get all the names. All right, so it's throwing Hodge in there and Chapman. So
yeah, those are the 2 I wrote about for the waiver wire article yesterday.
7 names.
Ryan Walker's clear number 1. I think he's just a stud closer. Number 2, I will go Porter Hodge, actually. And then I guess I'll give Michael Kopech the edge over Sir Anthony Dominguez, just because I'm not confident Dominguez is actually good. But then Chapman, and then Fauché, and then Ben Joyce. So again, Ryan Walker, Porter Hodge, Michael Kopech, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Aroldis Chapman, Calvin Fauché, and Ben Joyce. I think Fauché and Joyce are more clearly their team's closers, but I'm not as confident in their save opportunities.
To stream or not to stream on Tuesday, we have Cade Povich gets the White Sox. We'll put the you can start anybody against the White Sox theory to test here. We have David Festa at Tampa Bay. David Peterson gets the he gets the Red Sox. Aaron Savali gets the Cardinals. Ryan Nelson at the Giants. And Andrew Heaney gets the Yankees.
I think Ryan Nelson, just because he's been so bankable lately, would be my first choice to stream, followed by David Festa at the Rays and Aaron Savali against the Cardinals. Povich against the White Sox, I understand, but he was pretty bad in his last start.
And on Wednesday, we get Albert Suarez against the White Sox, Mackenzie Gore at the Marlins, Tyler McGill against the Red Sox, Ben Lively at the Royals, Colin Ray versus the Cardinals, JP Sears versus the Mariners.
Let's go Albert Suarez, JP Sears, White Sox and Mariners, their matchups, and Mackenzie Gore at the Marlins. I'm hopeful he's back on track after the way his last 2 starts went.
All right, and sorry we did not get to Team Name Tuesday. There was just so much to recap from the long weekend, but send those in, and I will read some on next Tuesday's podcast. We are going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.